Hello everybody and welcome back to the Cologne Zone channel. Lee here again. Today we're going to do something a little bit different because today we're going to be looking at a few fragrances from Penhaligons. Now Penhaligons is a company that I've always wanted to try their fragrances, never smelt anything from them. The only thing that I've come close to smelling is Blazing Mr. Sam, which I do believe I have a Perfume Parlor copy of. That smells pretty good, but all these fragrances, this will be first time ever smelling them. So I'm not going to go into how long they last because I don't know. Just going to go through what I smell. I don't really know the notes to any of these, so I'm probably going to butcher them and just completely expose myself as the complete novice that I am. So we've got Opus 1870, we have the Tragedy of Lord George, Sartorial, last but not least we have Halfeti. So we're just going to start off with Opus 1870. It says in here, trying to pick out some notes. Bit of pepper, it's a chypre, Japanese yuzu, balanced by English rose and clove, musks and some woods. So let's see what it smells like. And if anyone is wondering where I got these, on the Penhaligons website, they're for free, but £5.50 delivery. So you're kind of paying, for 1.5 ml, you're paying basically £1, which is pretty decent value actually. If you've got people selling that online, probably be a little bit more. Definitely starts off, it's old school, as it's always going to be. Penhaligons are kind of known for that kind of stuff. It smells really familiar. I don't quite know what it smells like, but it smells really, really familiar. There's a sweetness to it. It is like a chypre. It has got that kind of, I suppose, barbershop vibe. Kind of everything I expected a Penhaligons to be. Just really classy, really subdued, nice subtle fragrances for gentlemen. Quite soapy. I don't know if there is like lavender or something. There is definitely something there that is giving this ever so slight floral element. No, pretty good. Opus, be a perfect office scent, and I'll probably wear this to work. So next up we have the Tragedy of Lord George. Very nice little artwork there. Let's grab it up. It's got, I don't know if you can see that, it's kind of like green juice, so that's going to be quite interesting, I reckon. This one's a little bit deeper than Opus. I think it's definitely got more body to it. I think there might be a little bit of amber in this one. It is quite warm. It's like a soapy, warm, old school vibe. So this one takes me immediately back to, strangely enough, like my nan's bathroom. It definitely smells like some sort of shampoo or body wash or soap, probably bar soap actually, is a little bit soapy, that either she or my granddad would have used. Very old school. It's not fresh, but it is. Like, it's quite deep and dark, but it's soapy. I think there's a bit of amber in there. It is quite smooth, quite woody. But this is pretty good actually. This is pretty good. And the bottle to this is immense. So yeah, I mean, I guess another one that is exactly what I would have expected from Penhaligons. Classy, subdued elegance. So far, definitely prefer Tragedy of Lord George. Opus is quite nice, but for how long it's lasting, and it's kind of like fading away already, and for how light it is, I just personally really wouldn't see the point in spending that much money on a fragrance that projects that little. But Tragedy of Lord George is very nice. And I do apologise if you can hear a baby screaming downstairs. It's just her thing. Last but not least is Sartorial. Now when I was at work, I did kind of flick through a few things. This is probably before I knew I was going to get this. And the main thing that kind of came back with this is that it was meant to smell like Brut, or at least a lot of people thought it smelled like Brut. So there definitely is that Brut vibe. I suppose, I imagine they're both, I mean, I don't know how old Sartorial is, but if it's not old, it's definitely kind of based on fragrances of that era. And I know Brut's been around for ages. It's another kind of soapy-ish. I mean, when it comes to fragrances like the barbershop fragrances, there's not too much you can do with them really. But strangely enough, these don't smell alike. This one's definitely got, once again, kind of like a bar of soap, like a fragranced bar of soap back in the day kind of vibe to it. This definitely has a soapy layer above just being Brut. Obviously it does kind of have that similar DNA to Brut. They're both aromatic frigères, both old school fragrances. It's got kind of like a soapy top, and I don't know what that's coming from, but it kind of gives me this bubble bath vibe. And I think it's a little bit, don't get me wrong, it's been a little while since I've worn Brut, but it's kind of got this spiciness to it that I think Brut doesn't have. A slightly fresher Brut. I mean, if this lasts sort of twice as long as Brut, I think it could be actually a pretty decent fragrance. For how cheap Brut is, it's actually pretty nice. So far, so good. And last but certainly not least is Halfeti. Now, judging from the look of all these, they kind of all have this kind of white vibe. This one's going to be the one that I gravitate towards the most. So it's darker. Obviously, it looks like wood in there. I'm guessing there's going to be some rose featuring, but it looks like it's going to be a darker fragrance, which is definitely more up my street. So Opus and Sartorial are Eau de Toilettes. Halfeti and Tragedy of Lord George are Eau de Parfums. So let's give that a spritz. Right, so let's see how this one smells. It's a bit floral. A little bit woody, I would say. There's definitely something else in there. There's quite a nice, vibrant floral that's running through this, and it's giving it a little bit of pop in the top notes. I can feel that it's probably not going to last, and it's going to go to a more darker, woody, ethereal fragrance. Rose, maybe? I'm not too sure what kind of rose. I must admit, I'm not too well versed when it comes to roses, or kind of old school scents in general, really. I've smelt Brut, and that's probably about it for kind of old school fragrances. But this one's pretty good. I don't think it's trying to be an old school fragrance. Whereas I think Lord George definitely smells old school. Sartorial definitely smells old school. They're not too dissimilar now, actually, on the dry down. This one's going for something completely different. It's it's very warm, like a blanket of like woods, leather and rose. There may be a bit of oud in this. It might just be my mind going to, I can smell a little bit of rose, so oud's probably going to be in this. But it's not sticking out too much if it is in there. But it is very woody, very floral, a little bit of spices in there, and there's this kind of like green note that I think sticking around. There's a kind of spiciness to it, like a nutmeg, or like a cinnamon, maybe. Quite difficult actually, doing first impressions. I find them quite difficult trying to pick out which is which. I've probably got a lot of this wrong. So it's definitely warm, but I feel like it's not a thick warm fragrance where it's exclusively winter or exclusively autumn and winter. I reckon you could pull this off in the same scenarios that you could maybe a Creed Viking. So pretty much anytime. So overall, I would say my favourite is Halfeti, and then it would probably go into Tragedy of Lord George, Sartorial, and then Opus. I think Opus is a little bit too light for me. So they're all pretty much what I was expecting, really. Soapy, masculine, not too powerful, not too out there kind of fragrances. Kind of a throwback, which I think the whole Penhaligons brand kind of is. Of course, they've got great history, and of course they're going to keep hold of that. But Halfeti, I think, is very different, and I think it's very nice, and I really do like that one. So no, that was just me taking a really quick trip into the house of Penhaligons. If you liked the video, like it, give me a subscribe, hit the bell notification so you'll be notified when the next one comes on. I've been Lee from the Cologne Zone, and the pleasure is always mine.